The political landscape in the Middle East is once again on the brink of a significant shift as Iran's leadership adopts a more assertive stance regarding the delicate ceasefire with Israel. The situation is rapidly evolving, with Tehran warning that ongoing Israeli military actions in Lebanon could jeopardize the ceasefire and potentially ignite a wider regional conflict. Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian has spoken out strongly, accusing Israel of violating the ceasefire through its continued operations in Lebanon. This, he contends, represents a blatant violation of the truce, and he cautions that if Israel's activities persist, negotiations may become futile. Our hands remain on the trigger, he declared emphatically, underscoring Iran's commitment to its allies in Lebanon, specifically Hezbollah, and the broader network of groups aligned with Tehran. Parliament Speaker Mohammad Bagher Ghalaba has added weight to President Pezeshkian's statements, outlining what he described as core conditions linked to the ceasefire. He emphasized the inseparability of Lebanon and the broader resistance axis from any agreement, effectively broadening the scope of the truce to encompass not just Iran, but its regional allies. Ghalaba warned that any violations of the ceasefire would incur explicit costs and provoke strong responses, highlighting Iran's preparedness to retaliate if it perceives the agreement as compromised. This coordinated shift in messaging from Iran is significant. It not only accuses Israel of breaching the ceasefire, but also seeks to redefine the agreement's scope, expanding it beyond bilateral terms to include multiple fronts, particularly Lebanon. This strategic move creates a multi-front scenario where escalation in one area could justify retaliation across others, increasing the risk of a broader conflict in an already volatile region. Recent Israeli strikes in Lebanon, some of the largest in weeks, have further complicated efforts to stabilize TE truce. The strikes have resulted in mounting casualties and continued cross-border tensions, elevating the risk of renewed escalation. Iran, reportedly preparing a response to Israel's relentless campaign, could retaliate as early as April 9th. The Aerospace Commander of the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps, IRGC, has issued a stark warning to Israel, urging it to halt its actions, declaring that any aggression against Hezbollah would be considered aggression against Iran. He ominously stated the battlefield is now preparing for a heavy response, calling on the Iranian people to unite in support of this potential military action. On April 8th, the IRGC issued a stern ultimatum threatening a regret-inducing response if the attacks do not cease immediately. According to the state broadcaster Islamic Republic of Iran Broadcasting, the IRGC directed its warning towards the oath-breaking United States and its Zionist partner. Iran's Tasnim news agency, citing an unnamed source, reported that Tehran might withdraw from the two-week ceasefire agreement if Israeli attacks on Lebanon continue. The IRGC-linked outlet also indicated that Iran's armed forces are actively identifying targets in preparation for a potential response to Israeli strikes in Lebanon. Adding further pressure, Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi expressed on social media platform X that the world is witnessing massacres in Lebanon. He emphasized that Iran is drawing a red line, suggesting that what may come next could escalate into another round of full-scale regional conflict. Meanwhile, reports emerged that Iran has moved to close the strategic Strait of Hormuz in response to Israeli airstrikes in Lebanon, a move that could have significant implications for global energy markets and maritime traffic. In light of these developments, the White House has expressed firm support for Israel. The press secretary reiterated that the United States stands with Israel, contrasting its position. And with that of Iran and Pakistan, the closure of the Strait of Hormuz by Iran has raised immediate concerns for global energy markets and maritime traffic as vessels are forced to alter their courses. Iranian media reports that the move is a direct response to Israeli airstrikes in Lebanon, heightening fears of a wider regional conflict. Despite the tensions, the White House remains optimistic about the situation in the Strait of Hormuz. There are indications of increased traffic, suggesting the strait is starting to reopen, which has been reflected in a decrease in oil prices. The president has been clear that the ceasefire agreement includes the reopening of the strait, and he will not adhere to the ceasefire terms if Iran does not comply with its commitments. The Iranian response came on the heels of a significant announcement by the Israel Defense Forces, which declared that it had launched its largest strike against Hezbollah since the beginning of ground operations in Lebanon. In early March, reports from local media indicate that at least 254 individuals were killed in a single day of Israeli strikes, further escalating tensions in the region. Amidst these rising tensions, the White House has been actively engaged in diplomatic efforts to navigate the complex situation. The administration has dispatched a negotiating team to Islamabad for talks demonstrating a commitment to finding a diplomatic resolution to the ongoing crisis. The president has made it clear that the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz is a priority, and he will hold all parties accountable to this expectation. As the situation continues to unfold, the international community watches closely, aware of the potential for a wider conflict that could have far-reaching implications for regional stability and global energy markets. The stakes are high, and the coming days will be critical in determining whether diplomacy can prevail in averting a new escalation in the Middle East. In the current NT geopolitical landscape of the Middle East, the delicate ceasefire between Israel and its neighbors is facing significant challenges, primarily due to the evolving stance of Iran. The situation is fraught with tension as Iran's leadership is increasingly vocal about its dissatisfaction with Israeli military actions in Lebanon. This development is not merely a regional concern, but has the potential to escalate into a broader conflict, drawing in multiple actors across the Middle East. Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian has been particularly outspoken, accusing Israel of flagrantly violating the ceasefire by continuing its operations in Lebanon. He has warned that if these actions persist, the negotiations that underpin the ceasefire could become meaningless. Our hands remain on the trigger, he declared, emphasizing Iran's unwavering support for its allies in Lebanon, notably Hezbollah and other groups aligned with Tehran. Further backing these statements, Parliament Speaker Mohammad Bagher Ghalaba has articulated what he refers to as the core conditions associated with the ceasefire. He stressed that any agreement must consider Lebanon and the broader resistance axis, effectively broadening the truce's scope beyond Iran to include its regional allies. Ghalaba has cautioned that any breach of the ceasefire would result in explicit costs and strong responses, underlining Iran's readiness to retaliate should it perceive the agreement as undermined. This shift in Iran's messaging is strategic and calculated. By redefining the terms of the ceasefire to include multiple fronts, particularly Lebanon, Iran is creating a scenario where an escalation in one area could justify a response on another front. This approach significantly heightens the risk of a wider conflict, given the region's already volatile nature. The recent Israeli strikes in Lebanon, described as some of the most substantial in weeks, have exacerbated the situation, complicating efforts to stabilize the truce. Casualties are mounting and cross-border tensions continue to simmer, raising the likelihood of renewed hostilities. Reports indicate that Iran is preparing to respond to Israel's continued military campaign in Lebanon, with potential retaliation expected soon. The aerospace commander of the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps has issued a stark warning to Israel, urging an immediate cessation of its actions against Hezbollah, which he equates to aggression against Iran itself. The battlefield, he stated, is now preparing for a heavy response. Adding to the pressure, Iran's foreign minister, Abbas Araghchi, has taken to social media to highlight what he describes as massacres in Lebanon, signaling Tehran's intolerance for the current situation. This rhetoric underscores Iran's commitment to drawing a red line against further escalation, suggesting that the next steps could lead to a full-scale regional conflict. Meanwhile, tensions have also flared in the Persian Gulf, where Iran has reportedly closed the strategic Strait of Hormuz in response to Israeli airstrikes in Lebanon. This move has disrupted global energy markets and maritime traffic as oil tankers have been forced to turn back. Vessels tracked near the Musandam coast have reversed course, indicating the extent of the disruption. Iranian media reports suggest that this decision is a direct response to Israeli actions, further increasing the risk of a wider regional conflict. The White House has expressed support for Israel, with the press secretary affirming its position in contrast to Iran and Pakistan. The closure of the Strait of Hormuz has put additional strain on global energy markets, with the international community closely monitoring the situation. In response to these developments, the U.S. administration has been clear in its expectations. The president has categorically stated that the closure of the Strait of Hormuz is completely unacceptable, and he expects it to be reopened immediately, quickly, and safely. This stance reflects the broader geopolitical dynamics at play, where the U.S. seeks to maintain stability in a critical region while supporting its ally, Israel. As the situation unfolds, the potential for further escalation remains high. Iran's fiery rhetoric and actions in response to Israeli military activities underscore the fragile nature of the current ceasefire. The international community, particularly the United States, is closely monitoring these developments, aware that any misstep could trigger a broader conflict with significant global repercussions. The recent dynamics in the Middle East reflect a complex interplay of regional alliances, historical grievances, and strategic interests. As both Iran and Israel navigate this fraught landscape, the potential for miscalculation or unintended escalation looms large, underscoring the need for careful diplomacy and sustained international engagement to prevent a full L-scale conflict.